Hello, everyone. Welcome to the McQuaid Mission. I'm Chris Carraggia with the Social Television Network. You know, we're so glad that you have joined us here today. This series is dedicated to continuing Mike McQuaid's mission of ending homelessness here in the Valley. All right, who is Mike McQuaid? Well, let's tell everybody. We created this series for him, because of him, along with the Human Services Campus, in memory of Mike, who passed away this past summer due to COVID-19. He was known as Big Mo. He spent the last 40 years working diligently to help men and women living on the street find a home. He was relentless in this effort, and that's why we are honored to help keep Big Mo's hope alive. He started his quest to help the homeless back in the early 80s by donating so much of his time over at the Andre House. Those efforts ultimately led him to help build the Human Services Campus, where Mike served as board president. Speaking of the Human Services Campus, a little bit of information about that campus. It's located in downtown Phoenix. It began providing services to the homeless back in 2005. Since then, with the help of Mike McQuaid and so many others, it has grown tremendously. The campus, which has 7 buildings on 13 acres, is now a collaborative force made up of 16 partner organizations, all working toward one goal of getting people on the street and ultimately off the street and ultimately into homes of their own. Okay, let's talk about the Human Services Campus, who runs it. We are so happy to have the Executive Director, Amy Schwabenlender, on board for this series. She's going to be co-hosting with me on every single episode, and she's the obvious choice, of course, to drive this show because Amy continues the McQuaid mission every day on campus. And I think it's very appropriate that we have as our very first guest on the McQuaid Mission, Mike McQuade Jr. We are honored that he's going to be here to talk about his dad and the incredible legacy that he left all of us. Mike's going to be joining us in just a few minutes for that discussion. Okay, later in the show, we are so pleased that Congressman Greg Stanton, the former Phoenix mayor, will join us to talk about Big Mo and what he meant to the community. And then the Congressman will share with us details on something special he did on the House floor in Washington, D.C. just a couple of days after Mike passed away. So as you can see, we got a lot in store for you on this very first McQuaid Mission episode. But before we get to everything, I just want to tell you that this series and so much other leadership and community content is always available on our STN app. You can download the app through Google Play or, of course, the App Store. There's so much great content on there. It's uploaded every single week. And, of course, the McQuaid Mission is going to be front and center from here on out. Okay, let's get going with the show. Amy, like I mentioned, this is the only way to start the series, talking with Mike McQuaid. Mike, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. It's a pleasure.
You know, first of all, obviously our sincerest apologies go out to you and your mom and Pete and the entire family. Of course, your dad was such a great person. Let's start with this. And I know this probably changes daily for you, possibly, but what are some of the things you most remember about your dad?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, over the last 5 or 6 months since his passing, there's a lot of emotions and thoughts that go into my father. Certainly, he was an incredible father, first and foremost, an incredible husband to Molly. They had a wonderful, beautiful relationship that Peter and I were blessed to see for many, many years. I think it's helped us in our relationships. But, most of all, my dad was just a giver. He really cared for people. He really loved people. His faith was very, very strong. And I think that led him in the direction to try to help people. I mean, Chris, from, when you moved from New York and you were our next door neighbor, we were all kids. I mean, his giving back then was he coached everyone, and he was always there for the kids, trying to help them out, but he coached every sport, was there for all the kids. So at the end of the day, what I really remember my father is having a really, really big heart and really being someone that, gave and was always selfless. So he was just a giver.
No question about that. And again, you hit it right on the head there with the way I always felt about your dad. He sort of groomed me as I grew up, as well as everybody in the community, along with you and Peter. So he was a one in a million. He was just a special individual. Amy, let me ask you, when did you first encounter Mike McQuaid?
It was in 2005. I was working at Valley of the Sun United Way, and Mike, of course, had been part of this vision in creating the Human Services Campus, and United Way helped to fund a pilot in the Day Resource Center. And as Mike Jr. was just describing, Mike could walk into the room and command attention and outlay this vision of ending homelessness. And in preparing for today, I thought how appropriate that it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's a day of national service, and here we are launching the McQuaid Mission. And Mike, for me, was the best role model of a servant leader, and I could go on for hours and hours. I know we'll do this series for a while. We can keep sharing about Mike. He touched so many people. He loved everyone, and he did set this high bar for serving in the community.
Mike, you know, you said he was a giver, and no question about that. Can you remember back, I don't know exactly when, in the early to mid 80s, maybe 83, 84, when your dad first kind of tackled the Andre House? That became a passion of his. It seemed like overnight. Do you remember some of those early days when he used to take us all down there and help us and tell us to feed the homeless and get involved? What are your memories of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, remember that, and it was probably the mid '80s. It was getting close to when I was getting ready to graduate from high school, and you were older as well, and so were Peter and Gary. But he wanted us to see how to give back to the community, how to help out, and what to do. And again, I don't know exactly what drew him to the Andre House, but something drew him there originally. And from that moment on, there was something just grabbed him, and it's that mission to help out the needy, the homelessness, the people who were short on resources. That just became his mission. He fell in love with it. And, certainly, as I said earlier, he was all about giving back to Peter and I and all of our friends through coaching and other things. But as we moved on and started our lives, we went into college and started, having our own kids, he wanted to give back to the community. The community was important to him. And the Andre House just led to, obviously, the HSC and some of the other stuff that he's done. But just the need to help out the people that were homeless and hungry, it drew him, and it became his life's mission for the last 40 years.
And Amy, one final question to you, because you worked with Mike every single day for many years. What kind of inspiration can you take moving forward? I know you've been doing it here for 5 or 6 months, but do you feel his presence in your life every single day?
Absolutely. Myself and many others who work at the campus or are working to end homelessness, he's with us constantly. We recently, about a year ago, received a donation. We were able to purchase a clock to fill a hole that was in this design element on the campus for 15 years. And we finally worked with Mike to help pick a design for this clock. And now every day I say, "Good morning, Mike," when I look at the clock. And I talk to Mike on my way off the campus when I look at that clock on my way out, and tell him that we made progress and how we made progress that day, because he recognized the need, and he got very emotional about the need, and at the same time he always focused on solutions and success and wanted us to share the success of the people that we serve. And so he's guiding us all the time.
No question about it. And Mike, I know we're going to talk with you at the end of the show, but I just wanted to kind of close this segment, and you know this, but the reason why I'm sitting here with a microphone on, looking into a camera, something I've done for the last 25 years as a career, is because of your father. He drove me to be a broadcaster, and it started with, announcing your games as you continued your high school basketball after I went to college. So I always feel him whenever I'm doing something in my career, as well as my personal life, but especially during my career, because he's the reason. And you were there, you know that.
And as you know, Chris, we've got we have a ton of friends that feel the same way. Over the last 5 or 6 months, the amount of my friends and Peter's friends, all of our friends that have reached out and said, in some way, shape, or form, my dad is still with them and has touched them and continues to lead their lives and lead them in a positive direction. It's just it's incredible. But he had a special way of touching people, and I guess maybe that's why his mission was the homelessness. I mean, he had a way of, wanting to help them and touch them and lead them, for a second chance or a better life or something. And certainly all of us, his presence is still with all of us for sure.
No question. Perfect way to end this segment. Mike, Amy, we're going to check back with both of you in just a couple of moments. But right now, let's talk a little bit about the Human Services Campus and how it works. All right, we want to introduce you to Nancy, who lived on the street for a period in her life, but thankfully found the Human Services Campus, which helped her get her life back.
I was homeless from 23 to 25 and addicted. The prerequisites of homelessness is trauma. It's people who have mental illness or abusive childhood experiences. And I had abusive childhood experiences. And so what I did to cope with that is to use drugs and drink. I really didn't know what to do or how to live in this environment, and I was distraught. And it traumatized me greatly. I had to wait for 7 months when I tried to first get help. And when I was waiting in that time, I had to be homeless, and I'm 23 years old. What propelled me to change and get help was failure, and I was tired of living like how I was living. I never wanted to be homeless. It scared me so much. It was just so embarrassing and shameful. And people can see it on you. I walked down the street and people would see it on me. Or at least I believe they could see me. It doesn't even matter. But they would look at me with such looks and disgust. And they would see my homelessness, not my humanness. And when they would do that, it made me not want to exist more. Terrified. I thought that if I didn't exist, maybe that would be better. I needed a big change in my life. And it's hard to have a change in your life when you have no hope. When you have no hope. When I had no hope. There's parts of me that just wanted to give up completely and not even, just wanted to lay down and die, but I couldn't die. I kept on relentlessly living this existence that was literally torture. The antidote of that is to have somebody love you and care for you and act like you matter. It's a tragedy being homeless. It's not only that you don't have a home, but it makes people feel like they don't deserve to exist. So I've been sober for 26 years. April 1st is my sobriety date, 1994. I met the right people, and I had a community, and the community is the key. Value of Human Service Campus is going to a place where you're welcome, and that you know people care, and they want to help you, and they believe in you.
Such a great story. You know, it's just one of the many wonderful outcomes, courtesy of the Human Services Campus. But there are so many more people to help, and that's why we're all here doing this show, to create awareness. That's what Mike Mcquaid strived to do every day, and what Amy continues to do every day. So let's now send it back over to Amy for more about the campus.
Thank you, Chris. And while I have this chance to thank all of you at STN TV, the whole crew, for creating this incredible opportunity, we're going to cover a lot of ground over our episodes today. I'll spend a quick couple of minutes giving a little more context about the Human Services Campus. If we can go to a first slide, and a very short slide deck for those counting. The Human Services Campus did open 15 years ago. And where we've been, Phoenix, for those who grew up in Phoenix, you might remember downtown had a tent city. And at one point in time, Phoenix was called the most heartless city in the country. And so we come from this place of great need. There were about 1,000 people from Patriot Square Park and the surrounding downtown Phoenix area. And many people had this idea of creating a campus, and Mr. McQuaid was one of them, to be a compassionate response to homelessness and to also be an economic solution. It came together. This is a logo soup slide, if you will. It demonstrates the power, though, of the collaboration, and there's not one organization that can make a campus effective. There's not one organization that can end homelessness. And all of these organizations we hope to bring on to the show over time to educate everyone about all the awesome work that goes on every day. This collaboration reflects an interdependent array of services that really helps each person who comes to the campus find their way home. Where are we now? 15 years later, we have this Brian Garcia Welcome Center that was added about 4 years ago to the campus to have a front door where everyone can start their process of receiving services. And the Human Services Campus is a hub serving single adults where we see anywhere from 800 to 1,000 people per day. And it's not just at the Human Services Campus that we interact with people experiencing homelessness. The reason why this issue is so important to solve is that across Maricopa County, these numbers reflect a point-in-time count that happens in every January. And what's alarming is that the orange bar, the unsheltered number, has gone up dramatically since 2015. And it's the people that we see on the street. It's the people that Mr. McQuaid used to talk about so frequently, about how do we help each person move from street to home. So there are many factors that lead to homelessness, which gives us a lot of opportunity to solve homelessness. And when we look at the things that we do, not just on the campus, where we call it our own ecosystem, we look at all the interventions that our team at the campus intersects with, related to prevention, diversion, or reunification with family and friends, housing, which is affordable housing, supportive housing. It's housing with services wrapped around the people who live in those units. We're very regionally minded because homelessness is not just a downtown Phoenix problem. It occurs, that number of people counted occurs all across Maricopa County. All of our organizations are part of regional solutions. Over the course of these McQuaid Mission episodes, we want to cover homelessness from A to Z. We want to bring on partners, our nonprofit partners, government partners, businesses, funders, to talk about the solutions to ending homelessness that fall into these buckets or bubbles. And we want to talk about all populations, single adults, families, veterans, youth on their own, because homelessness, unfortunately, affects everyone. It doesn't leave anyone out. We also want to bring in former clients, employees, and board members because it really does take everyone working together to solve this complex issue. And across all of this, we'll carry out a theme around a race equity lens because part of our aspiration today and our strategic plan moving forward is to eliminate disparities that cause different outcomes for people experiencing homelessness based on their race. One of our most vocal and supportive champions locally when he was Phoenix mayor and nationally is now Congressman Greg Stanton. And we have a video with him. He could not be with us here today in person. He sent us a video to talk with us.
Hi, this is Congressman Greg Stanton. It's my honor to be on this episode of the McQuaid Mission. I love the fact that we're going to have a regular television show that's going to talk to people that are actively involved in the community, helping people in need, named after the great Mike Mcquade. When I was lucky enough to get on the Phoenix City Council, I was drawn to work on issues in terms of helping people, particularly people experiencing homelessness. I was drawn to that because of my family. I grew up in West Phoenix in a working class family. My mom was a part-time English teacher. My dad was a shoe salesman at JCPenney. He took the city bus every day to and from work to our home on the west side to downtown Phoenix to Park Central to sell shoes at JCPenney. But what really motivated them was their faith and activism in our church, St. Jerome's Catholic Church in the West Valley. And my parents ran an organization, a volunteer-based organization called Christian Needs Network. People from all walks of life, different income levels and race and gender and just everybody from different walks of life came together as people of faith to try to help others in need. And we would deliver food and clothing and diapers and shoes to migrant families in West Phoenix that were here working the fields, trying to put food on our table, and living in very difficult conditions. We would try to make their lives a little bit easier. And we also work with many churches in South Phoenix, and we worked at Adobe Mountain to try to help some of the youth that were going through difficult times in their lives. But it was really all about just putting their faith into action. That's what their faith called them to do. And can you imagine for a kid like me to be able to grow up in an environment like that where we didn't talk a lot about theology. We just talked about helping others. That's what our faith meant to us. That's what I've tried to do during my time in public life on the city council, as mayor, and now as a member of Congress, is to use the position that I've been blessed to have to try to help others. And that's why I was so drawn to Mike Mcquade. You see, I don't remember a time in my involvement in public life on issues helping people experiencing homelessness in which Mike Mcquade wasn't a leader in the formation of the Human Services Campus, a leader in the formation of the Day Resource Center in particular, helping people to move from homelessness into stability in their lives, into employment, so they could break their cycle of homelessness. But here's the truth. I just knew Mike Mcquade as a great, thoughtful, and effective leader on issues as it relates to people experiencing homelessness. And it wasn't until I went to an event in which someone described Mike Mcquade's history that I learned what an incredible person he was. I didn't realize at that time what a successful business leader Mike had been earlier in his life. He was so humble, he never talked about it. So I had no idea that when he was working full-time down at the campus, he was doing it for $0.00. He was fully volunteering his time. Mike Mcquade put his faith into action. And his faith said, you be humble. You don't brag about yourself. So he didn't talk about how successful he was in business. His faith called him to help those less fortunate than he. Because Mike Mcquade knew. He was humble enough to know that but for the grace of God, go any of us, myself, himself, anyone watching this video, but for the grace of God, any of us could be experiencing homelessness. We are one bad health situation, one bad divorce, one bad drug addiction, whatever it may be. Any of us could fall prey to that. And that's why he knew that when he was helping his fellow women and men who were going through tough times, he was serving his Lord, he was serving Jesus, and he was acting consistent with his faith. And as I became more aware of that, I just, like so many of us, just fell in love with Mike Mcquade and said, you know what? That's someone I honor, I respect, and if I'm ever in the position to do what he's doing, I would love to be in that same position. So for me personally, it's an honor to kind of kick off this show. I'd be there personally, but I am on an airplane right now because I'm flying back for the inauguration of President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. And they're making us go early because we all have to get COVID tests and COVID tests done by them. And so I have to go a day earlier than I thought. So I apologize for not being there personally. But I did want to just say thank you for doing this as a way to honor Mike. Thank you for a way to showcase others that are putting their faith into action, their values into action, to helping those in our society that need the help. Look, one of the things that motivates me about helping people experiencing homelessness is that someone that is homeless today is not going to be homeless tomorrow. We've seen so many success stories of people going through tough times, but with a little bit of a help, giving them a roof over their head, the medical help that they need, job training or job placement, they can get back on their feet and get their lives together. And when I see people who look like just you or I, and then they tell us their story that they had experienced homelessness not that long ago, I mean, it blows you away. It blows you away. It's a great comeback story, and we love great comeback stories. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about helping people who are going through challenging times in their lives. So thank you for honoring Mike Mcquade by naming this show after him and sharing people's stories who are committed to helping others like themselves. Thank you for letting me say a few words about my own experiences as well as working with Mike, and I hope I have a chance to be live on this television show at some point in the future. Have a great one.
Well, I get speechless every time I listen to Greg Stanton. I've had a very fortunate career in getting to work with him as mayor and now as congressman. He is one of the most genuine, authentic leaders that we have working for us here in Arizona. And I know one day he will join us here in person on the McQuaid Mission, Chris.
Definitely. Very inspiring words, very motivating words moving forward. Mike, let's bring you back. What did you think with Congressman Stanton, the former Phoenix mayor, what he said about your dad?
Well, as Amy said, I'm speechless. He hit it right on the head. It was beautiful. It was from the heart, which was it was an incredible few comments that he made. It's funny when I hear the story about his parents. They sound a lot like my parents. Not only was my dad a shoe salesman, because many may not know this because he had a successful real estate career, but my parents owned a couple women's shoe stores for many, many years. So my dad sold shoes. So maybe it's something about selling shoes that leads you to big heart and giving back to your community. But the biggest thing I took from Greg, and when he was talking about his parents, and I certainly saw it with Mike and Molly, was faith into action. That certainly was my parents' mantra. That led them down to the Andre house. Their faith led them to action, and certainly that step towards the Andre house led to many, many other things that my dad's done for the community and for the homeless. But it definitely, when Greg said faith into action a couple of times, that really rang true for me, because that's certainly what led my parents down that path.
And Mike and Amy, that wasn't the only video that Congressman Stanton sent. And we alluded to this earlier, but he did something on the House floor at the end of July, about a week after Big Mo passed, that he wanted to share here today with what he said on the House floor. Not word for word, but he wanted to kind of share what happened. So let's play that, and Mike, let's talk about it on the other side.
Recently, it was my honor to put the life and legacy of Mike Mcquade into the congressional record. I put in the congressional record his accomplishments, the things that he was passionate about, and how his work benefited the city of Phoenix, not just people experiencing homelessness, but all people of the city of Phoenix. Mike is one of the best people I ever met, ever had a chance to work with. We all love him, we admire him, and that's why it was my honor to be able to put his life into the congressional record. Thank you to the McQuaid family for supporting Mike and his work for our entire community.
Amy, before I ask Mike, what did you think of that?
Again, he is such an incredible leader, and Mike McQuaid's the first person I know of to have his accomplishments read into congressional record. And when the Stanton office contacted us at the campus to say that he had done this, Congressman Stanton didn't tell us in advance he was going to read this into congressional record. They told us afterwards, and it was this once-in-a-lifetime moment of thinking how incredibly special, and again, how authentic for a congressman to recognize our local hero, Mike McQuade. And I'll forever be blown away by both of them, Mike McQuade and Greg Stanton.
Yeah, I would think so. And you heard Congressman Stanton say he wanted when he learned about Mike McQuade, he wanted to be like Mike McQuade, and certainly doing that on the House floor meant so much. Mike, you weren't aware that he was doing that either, I would imagine. Can you just give us some final thoughts, especially about what Congressman Stanton did on the House floor that late July day?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly was something very, very special. When we first, my mom and my brother and I, when we first were presented the idea and what Congressman Stanton did, it was still pretty raw for us. It was only, 5 or 6 days after our dad's passing, so there's a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff going on. But as we've had time over the last 4 or 5, 6 months to, reflect on our father's passing and some of the things that have gone on, certainly what Congressman Stanton did was very, very special, and it touched us. And certainly, I think it brings awareness to the cause, which I think will benefit the community and the homelessness in the future. But with all that being said, my dad was a big fan of Congressman Stanton as well. I mean, he went to bat for my dad. He went to bat for the community. He went to bat for the homelessness. And he was, he's in the trenches there, and he's, fighting for the people as well that are, that maybe don't have some of the resources that a lot of us have, and that are down and out, that maybe just need a second chance or a third chance and just need that opportunity. Congressman Stanton is there for him, fighting as well. And my dad was a big fan of Congressman Stanton. So the respect and the love was mutual. And that I know for a fact. My dad had said that many times.
Well, I think this is a good place to kind of button up this first episode. A lot of information, a lot of inspiration. This is why creating awareness as well. This is why we created this. And Mike, I want to just thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you're busy. I know you have so much going on. I know it's hard, even though you're so strong, but it's hard to talk about your dad. It probably is still raw. I know you mentioned it was raw a week after. It probably still is. Yeah. So I just want to thank you for being a part of this. And in the future, we're probably going to be calling on you again. Yeah. But thank you.
Thank you. And if I could just say one thing, it has to go noticed, and it has to be brought up. And I know Amy brought it up that this being national holiday, Martin Luther King Day. I think it's maybe you guys planned it this way, or maybe this is how you did it. But certainly Martin Luther King is what he fought for and what he strove for. Certainly, I think plays into the homelessness. I mean, he believed in freedom, equality, opportunity, and most of all, community. And I think all those things are what my dad believed in. He believed in the freedom of people to not be homeless. He believed in equality, that all people were equal. Congressman Stanton said, sometimes you have a bad divorce, or you get injured, or your health goes wrong. I mean, that's my dad believed in equality. He believed in opportunity, giving everyone a chance, giving everyone a second chance, and that will lead to end homelessness. But all that, the big one was community. We all live in this community. We're all part of this community, and we have to help out our brothers and sisters. And that's really, at the end of the day, what my dad believed in. He loved the community. He loved his brothers and sisters, and he just wanted to help those people out and give them a chance. So, Chris, thank you for having me on today. I appreciate it, and God bless everyone.
And God bless you, and I wish we were astute enough to have worked this out on purpose, that we were doing the first episode on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but it did work out. So, Amy, some final thoughts. This is a good one going forward. I know Big Mo would say double C, not bad. Right? How do you feel about this moving forward?
As the campus, our employees, our board of directors, we're overwhelmed by the incredible generosity of STN TV, Chris, you and your team. We see this as an amazing opportunity to share, as Mike was just talking about, all the reasons why people fall into homelessness, and not placing blame on people who don't have a home, to tell their stories, to talk about the success, to talk about solutions. And really, so someday we can close out the McQuaid mission and say, we did it, we ended homelessness. Mm-hmm. Let's move on to the next complex social issue, because we are an amazing, resilient community. We certainly have the capacity to end homelessness. So I look forward to doing it with everyone watching.
Great. And I would be remiss, and Mike, I'm glad you stayed on, because I want you to hear this. This idea, I wish I could say that, boy, you know what, Big Mo was such a great part of my life, and a second father to me, which he was. And I wish I could say that this was my idea to create this and to reach out to Amy and do that. It wasn't. There are two gentlemen, and you know one very well, and one your dad got to know very well here. The two gentlemen that came up with this idea, the McQuaid Mission, and passed it over to me, and then we met with Amy and her crew, and everybody agreed that it was perfect. But the two gentlemen are Jody Isaac, who was an executive producer here and worked with me at Channel 5 for many years, and then Mike Rich, your childhood friend, or all our friend. Jody and Mike came up with this idea, and so I just wanted to get that out to the viewers and to you, Mike, that this was maybe something that Big Mo touched those two to kind of, through them, channel something to create this. And this is what we created, and we got one episode down. So thanks go out to Jody Isaac and Mike Rich. We appreciate that. Okay, Mike, thank you so much. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congressman
Thank
Stanton, you know, if you get to see this on an archive, thank you so much for being such a presence in this opening episode. Please join us for the next McQuaid Mission. We're going to try to do this every other week. So if my math is right and the calendar is right, February 1st should be episode number 2. So don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets. Help us make a difference today in ending homelessness. Make it a great day.